I want to welcome everyone to the livinginhawaii.com live YouTube, live Facebook video feed that we're going to be talking about uniquely Hawaiian real estate. I want to welcome you all for being here. It's totally excited to have you folks here. We've got a lot of really good questions that you've submitted. If you haven't gotten a chance to submit questions, or if you never submitted a question or don't even know how to submit a question, you want to go to the livinginhawaii.com website. The newsletter, you're going to have a pop-up that's going to ask you to sign the newsletter, sign up for the newsletter. Get on that newsletter. That's really the blood every single week. That's the bloodline of what goes on every single week. There's a new newsletter, and that's the way you get connected to everything. So we got a bunch of questions lined up, and let's move on. We're gonna go to our first question over here, and I thought this was a really good one. This is God's way of telling us what we should talk about for today, because this came out in the news just yesterday. This is May 21st yesterday. Today is the 22nd. And yesterday, the story was sales are slow, but prices rise as the pandemic shutdown changes real estate agents' operations. And we have a couple of questions that a couple of you submitted some questions about this. We had Aaliyah from Banning, California, who asked, will the COVID-19 cause housing prices on the Big Island to plummet? And we also had a follow-up from Eric from Warsaw, Poland. So it's always cool to get a thing from Warsaw, Poland. What is your prediction of condo prices in the coming 1 to 3 months on Oahu? So being as this is a good Big Island question and a good Oahu question, I thought it'd be a great way for us to get the ball rolling. Dylan, why don't you kind of start with this one? Is what's going on? The article had a very interesting observation about prices and demand and listings. What's going on?
Well, as we discussed in past weeks, there's definitely been a big reduction in the number of listings that are coming on the market. You know, it seems like sellers are a little bit wary of putting their property on the market right now. So there's been anywhere between like a 40 and 50% reduction, depending on which market you're in terms of the number of listings. So there's half as many homes on the market. But as anybody that understands economics, supply and demand drives price. And so if supply goes down and demand somewhat stays the same, prices go up. And that's pretty much what we're seeing simplified here, is that the buyer demand is still there. If you're here and you want to buy and you want to live here, you're still going to buy, regardless of the situation that we're going through right now. And so we're definitely seeing that. I'm having 3 closings between yesterday and Monday or Tuesday that went into escrow since the lockdown began, and all of those are closing within 45 days. So the buyer demand is still there, and that's definitely holding up prices. And if you look back in the last 50 years, when there's been economic slowdowns, the only real time that the prices crashed was in 2008, 2009. And there was this is a long discussion, but a lot of other underlying issues with lending and credit and people getting loans that they shouldn't have gotten that led to that bubble. Those systemic issues have been fixed since then, so that those kinds of things aren't going to affect the market right now. You can still get a loan. You can still get a USDA loan. You still get a VA loan. Some of the real big jumbo programs have tightened up if you're going to get like a $2 million loan. But if you're a regular home buyer, in that $300 to $1 million price range, you can still get a loan pretty much no problem, as long as your employment hasn't changed. So that's what we're seeing, with prices continuing to inch up a little bit, and even though the number of sales that are happening per month are falling.
It's interesting. So prices are going up. Scott, so the follow-on question here from Eric at Warsaw, Poland says, what's your prediction? Now, of course, I'll let you give your own disclaimer on that. What's your prediction of condo prices coming in 1 to 3 months in Oahu?
Yeah, I mean, condo prices actually went up 7% this past month. And it goes back to what Dylan said. I actually look back at it at like my first year in college economics, supply demand. And, if you have 100 buyers and 100 sellers currently in the market, COVID hit, and the number of new listings coming on dropped to 50 people, looking to put their home on the market. But the buy side, because rates or mortgage interest rates dropped to historic levels, maybe you have 75 buyers in the market now. So there's actually more buyers than there is sellers. That imbalance got to be worse. So prices actually went up this past month, 5.5% for homes and 7% for condos. So part of that, I think the sellers were afraid to come on the market from a health and safety standpoint. Plus the economy got shut down. People were kind of taking a wait and see attitude. over the next 1 to 3 months, I don't see a whole lot changing. I think we're still going to have a supply-demand imbalance. We're a small island out in the middle of the Pacific with limited land. We've always had a supply-demand imbalance, and COVID kind of magnified that a little bit. So I see us either being sideways or a little positive going over the next 1 to 3 months. A little further out from that, it may change a little bit as they start to open stay at home, which is what we're moving towards now. And then the big question is okay, when do we get rid of the 14-day quarantine and allow tourists to come in? Because now, at that point, then you have buyers coming in off island. We don't have any buyers coming in off island, and we still have the supply demand imbalance without any offshore buyers. I don't see things going down for now.
So I've had a bunch of people who were commenting previously from other sources that were saying, oh, the market's gonna crash, or I'm gonna wait because I'm gonna buy at 50% discount. It's like, that's not gonna be happening.
And I would like to add another thing. If you look at 2008 when the crash happened, who only dropped 11%. The bigger key here, which people are ignoring, is the fact with mortgage interest rates dropping from 4.5% to 3%. If you get a $500,000 mortgage now versus a couple of months ago, that's over a $400 difference in your payment per month. For you to be able to get, for prices to drop, for you to be able to get that same discount in your mortgage, prices would have to drop $100,000. They didn't in 2008, and they just went up now. Why do we assume that they're going to drop drastically like that in the next coming months coming down this road? I don't see it happening. The buy opportunity just presented itself a huge gift in the discount in the mortgage rate.
So the old my favorite line, I'm not a realtor, you guys are, but my favorite line from realtors is the best time to buy is right now. Always the case, right? Best time to buy is right now, which is truer than ever before. Okay, let's go to our next question. And I really want to encourage you all, by the way, to everyone's done we've got a fantastic job of getting some questions from you folks. You want to hop onto the website, sign up for the newsletter. You'll get my newsletter. You'll be able to click on a link and submit your questions. The great collection of questions over here. Let's go to this one. This is going to be for you, Scott. This is the Hanauma, my favorite Hanauma Bay background over here. Most beautiful place on earth. Probably the best place to swim anywhere. Anyway, other than maybe Kealakekua Bay on the Big Island, right? Right, Dylan? This is the equivalent for the Big Island. Anyway. So the question is from Mike of San Francisco. And Mike says, we'd like to purchase land and build a custom home and with pool in Oahu. How long would the process take? What is the average to high range build cost? And would the construction cost vary depending on what area of the island we're in? We noticed some new developments in Makaha and are curious about that area. Is it an up and coming area? Are there any plans by the local governments to improve the commute from that area to town? And the first thing I gotta share with you is I read this to the guys off the show as we're kind of getting ready for the show. And as soon as we all saw this slide, we all laughed really, really hard about it because of the general comments about Makaha. And I think this really illustrates that you really need to kind of connect with people like us. You want to connect with Scott, you want to connect with me, you want to be on the website, because if you did, you'd realize that Makaha is, well, I'll let Scott talk about Makaha. So Scott, why don't you kind of hit this one? We got a whole bunch of questions. Take it to where you want to take it about the custom home costs, refurbishing, what's going on with Makaha, etc. Hit it.
Yeah, I mean, the first one, how long is the process, for a build? I mean, the first challenge that you have over here, and just to give a little background, I do have the development company. I do new home construction. I'm building right now in Kapahulu, where I get out there with the guys in frame. I run these projects and do syndications, investment syndications. So I have a significant background in this area. Just from the permitting, design and permitting phase, you're probably looking a year. Design portion, depending on how quickly you work with your architect to get it pinned down, but minimum you're looking 6 months for permitting. And we hire a third-party plan review company. We pay them extra money to try to move that process through. And we ended up at almost a year for Hauula and about 6 to 8 months for the permit, not including the design side for Kapahulu. So Then you got the construction time frame, year and a half. If you're doing something custom with a pool, as far out as 2 years, depending on how how detailed that home is going to be and how custom it's going to be. Can you bring up the other questions, Peter? Average rate, average cost for build, you're looking $200 to $400 a square foot for the general range. Once you get a $400 to $1,000 a square foot for custom, depending on how custom you go, you could easily end up in the $600 a square foot range for build cost over here on the custom in side. As far as Makaha up and coming, I love Makaha. Makaha is one of my favorite places. I've spent a lot of times out at the Makaha Beach Cabanas. I've sold a couple of oceanfront properties out there. I absolutely love it to get away, to relax. I love that coastline, but there's some significant challenges in Makaha. Commute is one of them. Commute is always going to end up having to get out of that leeward coast with one way in, one way out. I know they've widened the road, but I have a client that lives out there on the ocean, and it might improve it a little bit, but one accident and you can't get out of the leeward coast out there. The good thing is, and this is kind of funny, but building out of Kapolei as the second city, I do see Makaha as being a significant value play and a great place to buy close to the ocean, because it used to be to get out of Makaha to go to your big box stores and things, you were driving all the way to Pearl City, which was 45 minutes or more, maybe even an hour. Now that they've built out Kapolei and they're going to continue to as our second city, I actually see that as being along the coastline, one of the most affordable, best value, long-term value deals as far as oceanfront, because your commute to Kapolei to get everything that you need is not nearly as bad anymore. But you have to live out there with the understanding that you're going to get stuck out there sometimes, or stuck not being able to get back home due to the one way in, one way out, and the commute time into Honolulu. Man, you're talking an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours to get into town. And that,
thanks, Scott. That's a great overview. I'm kind of one thing that struck me about the Makaha comment was the cultural side. So Dylan, why don't you kind of speak to this one just for a little bit? You just moved. You've been living in you're Mike. You've been in San Francisco. You're going to move to Hawaii, and see, Scott's already smiling. Go ahead. So don't hold back here, Dylan. So you move to Oahu, and the first place you sort of move to is Makaha. What should you be prepared for? And make sure there you go.
Yeah, well, it's a very local town, and that's one thing. And the advice I always give, because we work with tons of people who move here from someplace else, and people have sometimes apprehensions about that. Will they be accepted? And my general advice is, if you come here and accept us, we will accept you. And it's the people that come here and say we're messed up and it should be more like where you came from, that don't last very long and have a hard time. So I'm surrounded by people. My mother being one of them. She came from New York in the 70s and assimilated right in, and you could never tell she lived anywhere else. My in-laws came from California in the 70s also, and are as local as you can possibly be. So aloha is not something that's in your blood. It's something that's in your attitude. And that's the biggest thing, is you have to be prepared for that. It's going to be a little bit more extreme if you go to a community like Makaha that has primarily long time local families. There's not as many transients in those areas, and every island has those pockets of communities, and that's something that you want to consider before you purchase there. Is that the right fit for you?
Yeah, I would not make Makaha the very first place I move into. It's a right. Thank you. Y'all caught that laugh there. That was not rehearsed. It would not be the first place I would move to. It'd be the place that you might move to once you kind of get a feel for what's going on in Hawaii, and you've been here for a little while, and you understand the truth of what Dylan said. But it does require a transformation, and I got a ton of videos about talking about those very things. Let's move on. Well, real quick, here's a real quick one. This is how far is the commute from Makaha to the closest military installation? Scott, you want to hit that one real quick? That should be a pretty easy one.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they have the back entry open to Schofield. I know they had closed it down for a while. If not, then 30, 40 minutes through the mountain. But if it's closed, then you're probably talking an hour and 15 minutes to split, to go up the H2 to Schofield, you're probably talking an hour, hour and a half to Pearl Harbor. Pacific Command's right there as well. So you're at least looking probably an hour.
And that's on a good day. That's on a good day. That's on a good day.
With a beautiful drive, but
gorgeous drive all the way there and all the way back. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to our next one here, and that is well, this is a little show plug over here. Well, actually, it's not. It's a combination of a show plug and a question. So Char from Southern California, she asked, please explain tenure, leasehold, and simple fee. So Char, I just want to tell you, I've got a couple of videos, 2 or 3 of them, and I'm going to have more. They're queued up for a future series, but I've got a bunch of videos on the YouTube channel where if you go to livinghawaii.com YouTube channel and just search in that area for leasehold in Hawaii, I've got those in there. I talk about in great detail the differences between leasehold and fee simple, etc. And again, if you haven't already, folks, you definitely want to get on that on our YouTube channel. Got all kinds of content. Also, want to plug this real estate part is we're going to be opening this into. Well, I've already opened it into a new Hawaii real estate YouTube channel. So the Living in Hawaii is about the culture, address the kind of things that Dylan talked about, and we're having the Hawaii real estate channel that we're going to be posting this kind of stuff and other things about real estate. I think Scott and Dylan are handing over some 360 videos for me, and we're going to be looking forward to putting those 360 videos on those homes. That's going to be a kind of a fun thing. All right, let's move on to the next question, which is, now this one comes from, we had 2 people who asked similar questions here. This is from Jason of Mexico City and Linda from San Diego. Dylan, I'm going to hand this one over to you. Jason, Mexico City says, I've noticed relatively high maintenance fees for condos and have also heard of tenants not paying them for such reasons. I imagine no one would advise not to pay their maintenance fees, but essentially, could you get a higher mortgage and own a house instead of a condo for the same monthly amount? Would you recommend buying a condo or single family house? Hearing about the pros and cons about both would be very helpful. Mahalo nui, and hoping you all stay safe and healthy. Linda's got a similar question. Why are the HOA fees so expensive? We've seen some over $1,000. Also, property taxes. What does the future look like since governments are in need of revenue? Dylan, why don't you let's just round this up here. Why don't you hit that the first piece about sort of the maintenance fee? You know, is it cheaper to buy a home versus a condo plus maintenance fee? How do you address that one?
So first, addressing purchase power. So, you know, a general kind of rule of thumb you can use is every $500 that you pay towards a mortgage represents about $100,000 that you borrowed, right? So if you borrow $500,000, your mortgage is going to be around $2,500 a month, give or take with interest rates and things like that. So when you add in a monthly maintenance fee, that is going to go into your ability to qualify for a loan if you are getting financing. So if your maintenance fee is $500, that represents $100,000 in purchase value. So, you know, if you're going to buy a $300,000 condo with a $500 maintenance fee, your monthly cost is similar to buying a $400,000 house where you don't have a maintenance fee. So that's one way to look at purchasing power, and then the maintenance fee, and then just scale that up if it's $1,000 or $1,500. But the important thing to think about with a maintenance fee and condos when you're considering purchasing is, what are your lifestyle desires? Because the reality is, anybody who's a homeowner, and all of us can tell you, it's not free to live in a home. You may not incur those expenses on a monthly basis, but at some point you're gonna have to paint the house. At some point you're gonna have to fix the roof. At some point you're gonna have to do, you're gonna have to pay a yard guy if you don't want to do all the yard maintenance yourself. If you have a pool, you have to pay a pool guy. So if you add in those costs as a homeowner, you may pay $200-300 a month in a yard guy, $100 a month to a pool guy. And then every 10 years, you got to paint the house so you can amortize that cost over the course of the 10 years. And so basically with a maintenance fee, what you're paying for is you're prepaying for a lot of that maintenance, and then that ongoing upkeep of your condominium complex. And then, of course, there's other things that go into it. A lot of times it includes trash service, it includes your water, it includes exterior insurance. So there's a lot of things that your maintenance fee covers that you would still have to cover as a homeowner. It's just a different way to look at it and pay for it. So you just got to put it into perspective. It's sometimes, for somebody who doesn't want to maintain a home, who, especially for a part-time resident who wants to just lock the door and leave, a condo makes a lot of sense because you don't have to worry about the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance of your home. If you have a part-time home here, you're still going to have to cut the yard and maintain that home, and maybe have a security system and have somebody come and check it once every other week to make sure there's no leaks. So there's a lot of things that you can incur cost on in a home that is very similar to a maintenance fee, only you're not mandated to pay it. In terms of tenants not paying it, to just address that, the tenant is not responsible for a maintenance fee. The maintenance fee is the owner is responsible for the maintenance fee. So a lot of times the cost of that maintenance fee is built into rent. So the rent that you pay to your landlord then will go towards his expenses, whether it be the maintenance fee, the taxes, the mortgage, and other things. So a tenant doesn't really have the option not to pay a maintenance fee. The owner is ultimately responsible.
So let's talk about those maintenance fees for a moment. Scott, there was Linda's question from Linda from San Diego. She basically said, "Hey, how come the HOA fees are so expensive? We've seen some over $1,000. How do you respond to those high maintenance fees? Those HOA fees, I should say."
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question because a lot of times it's less on the mainland. However, for me, I've sat on association boards for 15 years, and I've created condo associations and created condominiums and homeowner associations as well. So I got a lot of background on this, but there's basically three things that go into making up what your maintenance fee is going to be. For one is size of the building or size of the project. For example, if you're in a 30-unit building and you got one elevator, you got 30 people sharing in the cost of maintaining and upgrading that elevator and the parking lot, versus a 400-unit building where there's 4 elevators. Now you basically are dividing that up between 100 people per elevator. So just from that standpoint alone, the smaller the building, the higher the maintenance fee should be, just from a shared cost standpoint. Then the question comes down to number of amenities. You've got some of these buildings, Honolulu Park Place, for example, you got a bowling alley, sauna, steam room, multiple jacuzzis, pools, the whole 9 yards, restaurant even in there, and you're paying for that every month. There's more amenities. Even some of the ones in Kaka'ako have like a chef's kitchen that you can hire someone to come in and entertain for you and do all the cooking and you have it catered out, valet and things such as that. So that those services are obviously going to add based on the amenities. And then the last one, which I feel is actually probably the most important one, is the reserve portion. You got operating expenses per month, that your resident manager salary, your common area electric, that's all going to be the same. You can't manipulate that at all. You can't change that. But what you also have to account for is, hey, when is that elevator going to have to be replaced? When is that roof going to have to be redone? That's called a reserve study or a capital reserve account that the associations put to every month. And the interesting thing is the state of Hawaii requires minimum 50% funding to future capital improvements. So if your elevator is going to need to be redone in 10 years and it's a $200,000 expense and your association is funding to it only 50%, well, guess what? In 10 years, you're going to have to borrow from Paul to pay Peter. So you're taking from the painting project, you're taking from the asphalt repaving project to do that, which means you're either going to have an assessment coming up, or in times like these, where on Oahu, a lot of the buildings were built in the 60s and 70s, their plumbing and their elevators are coming due, which is the biggest expense you're ever going to run into with a condo. And if the association hasn't fully funded or been maintaining those funds for this buildup, then you're going to see some higher maintenance fees at this point. And I see that pretty common because 10, 15 years ago, someone says, hey, I don't want to pay for the future elevator project now. I'm not going to be around. And so they don't. There are some very well-run condo associations and there's some very poor ones. Dylan and myself and others can sit down and go through that capital reserve account and make predictions on where your maintenance fees are going to go.
Yeah, I think, as you're saying all this, and I myself personally have bought and sold, a collection of homes through my life in Hawaii. And, as you're saying this, I'm like, boy, I definitely would need to talk with a guy like Scott or with Dylan before I go and do all this stuff, because you guys have bought and sold. You guys basically have helped sell or buy condos, I've done a handful. You guys have done dozens, if not hundreds. So I definitely, that's folks, you definitely want to get get onto the Living in Hawaii website, get up for the newsletter. We have a form that says, can I let us help you find a home in Hawaii? These are the guys that I'm connecting you with when that form gets filled out. You connect with Dylan for the Big Island and for the neighbor islands, and you got Scott for Oahu. And I'm just really, really happy to have you guys here with us. Okay, so I want to time this next question. I'm kind of want to do a surprise slide to get your guys' reaction on it. And here we go. Can I get a home in Lanikai for $350,000? You see there you go. You all see the smiles over there. Yeah. And so let me read this out. And it's a great question because Mike from Chicago. Mike, I was born in Chicago, so you're from the place I was born. It's no longer my hometown, but it's the place I was born. Mike says this. He says, after visiting the island and doing some research, I really love the location and welcoming, family-friendly vibe of Kailua and Lanikai. However, the real estate is very expensive and feels quite out of reach. Is there any way to buy a home there at a reasonable cost, less than $350,000? Or could Kaneohe or Waimanalo or Maunawili offer a similar lifestyle for a more affordable price? Also, how are the property taxes in these towns? Would flood insurance be necessary? Thank you. Similar price. Karen from Amherst, Massachusetts says, hey, can you retire in Honolulu coming from Massachusetts and only spend up to $300,000 for a condo? At least she's asking for a condo, not a house. Or is it more possible to rent, say, a 2-bedroom apartment for just me and my husband? So I want to move there after moving there a few years ago. So first of all, I want to thank Karen and Mike for the question. And I think, this really is about, the whole thing of real estate in Hawaii. Can you find a home for $350,000, not in Lanikai, much less? Scott, first of all, what's the going rate, give or take, for? If you're going to buy in Lanikai, if you were going to buy in Lanikai, how much money would you have set aside to buy in Lanikai?
Lanikai starts at $2 million. The median sales price is $2.5 million in Lanikai. But I think this touches on a different portion, which is this is where you as the consumer should reach out to us. We're here to educate you and give you the information so you can make the best decision for your needs going forward. And we help you navigate through that. So I love the question. It's perfect because now it allows us to share that also with other people. As far as, our median home price on the island of Oahu right now is over $800,000. Our median condo price is $450,000. So
wait, hold on a second. You need to pause that. You just kind of flowed right off your tongue over there. It was beautiful. It would flow right off your tongue because we live it every day. Let's just back up for a second and say this one more time, nice and slow, so everyone can hear it clearly for emphasis. Scott,
the median home price. Yeah, median home price on Oahu this past
is
$800,000.
Median home price is $800,000. That means half the home sold for more and half the home sold for less. Yes. Yep. And the condo?
For $450,000.
Condo is $450,000.
Yeah.
So
I kind of look at it this way. $300,000 is about your threshold to get in on fee simple on Oahu. And that's not necessarily urban core, or it could be studio to 1 bedroom and up. But you can get a dynamite property in Makaha on the ocean at Makaha Beach Cabanas for $300,000. So there are some options in that 300 and up range, but from the single family home side, you're talking, I'd probably say you're about 500,000 and up for median home price, or for a home to get in on a home starting somewhere. And whether you like the neighborhood or the type of home, single family, a single wall construction is the question.
Yeah. I think that the one of the things that came off on this, and this is advice I had given to some folks earlier, which is, look, if you're gonna move to Hawaii, you definitely should be you should put it upon yourself to talk to people who kind of have lived here and people who buy and sell real estate here. Certainly, I would say in many ways too is, take some time to rent and live here for a month and a half, 2 months. It doesn't have to be a long-term rent, but rent so you could at least get a feel for the vibe of the place, because you really don't want to, the last thing you want to do, Scott is great. Dylan is great, but you need to drive around the neighborhood and you need to get a feel for what this place is like to see if it's going to fit you, because everyone's different. So that's a real good. Dylan, is there anything you want to kind of chime in over here?
Well, something to always remember is, people say, I really love it in this area, but it's so expensive. Can we get anything for cheaper? Well, the reason you love it is because it's a great area and other people do too, right? So that's why the demand for that area goes up. And so that's something always to consider is, if you want to live exactly where you want to live and enjoy all of the benefits of that place, you're going to pay for it because you're not the only one.
Yeah, it's the old it's the old classic supply and demand. It's really it's kind of simple economics. And that's what that story is all about. All right, let's go to our next one, and this is a show plug. Are you in the Ohana? Are you a part of this? If you're here because you're on the newsletter and you got notice of this live broadcast, you're already in the Ohana. But if you're watching this video and you just kind of somehow found it in one way, shape, or form, and you're not getting that newsletter, you want to go to livinginhawaii.com and sign up for that newsletter. It's going to pop up as soon as you go to the website. And that's how you get connected to guys like Scott and guys like Dylan, and of course, guys like me with the YouTube channel and all kinds of information. We're doing the best we can to get everybody educated as much as possible. And more importantly, that these guys, you're seeing us live here on the channel. There's a degree of connection that you have, and you know who you're dealing with. So I just want to encourage everybody to get on that livinginhawaii.com website. All right. Let's move on, and the next question is going to be from you. This is going to be for you, Dylan, and this is from Stephanie in Houston, Texas. And Stephanie says, "Do I have to be in Hawaii to secure a condo? Can I conduct any business from another state easily? Do most of these condos come furnished? What is the likelihood of being able to rent out these condos on VRBO, etc.?" So, Dylan, what I'm kind of catching here from Stephanie, she's basically seems to me like she's looking to be able to buy a condo, do it remotely, not have to physically move here, rent it out, VRBO, some kind of an income property. That's a big, huge topic, actually, that we'll get into. But why don't you kind of take Stephanie's questions and kind of you give it your best shot?
Yeah, the answer is definitely yes. You don't have to be here. I've sold many, especially condos. I'm much more comfortable selling condos sight unseen. In terms of the unit, I like the buyer to have some, be familiar with that complex, because a lot of times buyers come and they look at a condo complex, but there isn't the right unit on the market, and then the one comes on the market that they really want. And we can do things like, and make sure if you're you're talking to a realtor, they can do things like go get you a 360 video, get you a nice walkthrough video, do a virtual tour for you, because there's things that you can do electronically and virtually that allow you to purchase or feel comfortable about purchasing without having to be here. So definitely from a physical standpoint, everything that you need to do from a transactional standpoint can be signed electronically, other than the closing documents, which our title companies here will hire a mobile notary to come to wherever you're at to sign those documents at your home or at your place of business or wherever you are. So we're continuing to conduct closings. The vast majority, I'm sure Scott can attest to this too, with our clients that come from the mainland, they're not here for closings. They buy. They may come for a buying visit and pick the property that they like. But once they leave, we hire a professional home inspector. They'll do the home inspection. We can get additional video and pictures if they need that. And then the whole entire process of signing documents can be done electronically, other than the final closing documents. So there definitely is no need to be here. From a furnished and VRBO standpoint, for condos, it varies. Sometimes condos are sold turnkey furnished, sometimes they're not. Sometimes the furniture is negotiable. So you kind of have to look at those on a case-by-case basis. And then on the VRBO short-term rental aspect, that's something you have to look at from county to county, because each island has different rules. The Big Island rules pretty much allow for short-term rentals in condos as long as their HOA CC&Rs allow for it. So there are some complexes that want to be residential complexes, and they have like a minimum 30-day rental period. So it kind of eliminates that nightly rental market. But the vast majority of condos can be rented out short-term, as long as you apply to the county and get the permit to do that.
I wanted to talk about that between the three of us. That one topic about the VRBO, I think, is a really interesting one, and I think there's been a lot of blowback over here on Oahu, Airbnb, VRBO. really, really disruptive of the market. Well, I shouldn't say disruptive. It's really kind of changing a lot of market dynamics. You have neighborhoods that have gone from being quiet, sleepy neighborhoods to essentially vacation rental neighborhoods. Very disruptive to the folks who live there, driving up prices. Scott, what do you kind of, Oahu's been kind of clamped down big time on the whole VRBO and short-term rental. Frankly, right now during the COVID thing, they're deemed non-essential. They're actually shut down. But what do you kind of see? I want to have a conversation between us as what do we see the long-term effect of this? Because I see a lot of negative effects affecting local residents, local prices. What do you guys see on that side of going on with this? Scott, why don't you get started with that? And then Dylan, you jump in.
You're asking on the vacation rental bill?
Basically, well, I don't have a specific bill, but kind of generally speaking trend, what do you kind of see going on with this sort of whole short-term rental, Airbnb, VRBO kind of thing happening?
Well, short-term, there is no market right now. I mean, there's no.
It's gone. It's dead.
And you're not allowed to do it. So it's dried up. Any income you had, if you were trying to offset expenses, that went out the window, which I actually think that's why I think that's going to be the biggest play in this market. You had a whole bunch of people that bought wanting to supplement part of that cost to be able to come here and use it in Waikiki, and they can't do it now. The other aspect that added to that was the transient accommodations bill that totally, I don't want to say it changed the landscape, because the funny thing is it didn't really change who was allowed to do vacation rentals and not. You weren't ever allowed to do vacation rentals in the residential communities. They just didn't enforce it. And now they put on hefty fines to the tune of $1,000 to $10,000 per fine. So that really clamped it down, and you can't, and it made it illegal for Airbnb and VRBO to host illegal vacation rentals. But it did change the landscape. And I mean, the intention of that bill was great. I felt not bad. It was pretty good, but the execution of it was really poor. And I went through it and read it significantly. So if anybody ever wants to talk about it, I know it in detail, and we can always, kind of work through that and understand what it is. But it's basically moved it on Oahu to resort zoned properties. And there's even some questions like Diamond Head Beach Hotel on the Gold Coast has in their bylaws certain units that don't have full kitchens. You can only use it 14 days a year. Ala Moana Hotel is another one where it's actually apartment zoning. So it doesn't fall in the zoning category to be able to do short-term, vacation rentals, yet it's written in there, you as an owner, you buy it, you can't stay in here for more than 14 days. It's intended to be put into a hotel rental pool. So that bill caused some real disruption and some problems. You go on the other side of Kuhio, the Alawai side, all those properties are not resort zone. The ones on the other side are. So you had a shift in value higher to the ones on the ocean side of Kuhio because they were legal vacation rentals overnight, and you eliminated competition. And then COVID hits and you eliminated all your income. I mean, it's kind of a crazy scenario, but I think that's where the play will be.
That's interesting. So Dylan, what do you see going? That's a talk about like market dynamics flying all over the place. I mean, wow, it's crazy. So Dylan, what's kind of going on? What do you kind of see going on? Kona, Hilo, what's kind of going to be? What do you kind of see going? Where does the trend line look as what's going to be happening with short-term vacation rentals, VRBOs, Airbnbs, and things of that nature?
So let me start with kind of the current situation, inject some more market big philosophical dynamics. Okay. So the first thing is that we recently at the end of last year had some new regulations go into place, which greatly restricted where you could vacation rent. So if you were currently renting in a residential area that wasn't properly zoned, there was a process you could go through to apply for a permit, basically grandfathering you in so you could continue to do it. So they basically awarded people who were not doing the right thing and illegally renting their homes in the wrong zoning by allowing them to continue. So that was interesting to begin with. And then if you had proper zoning, you then had to go through a permitting process where they did different reviews and made sure you're paying your taxes and you had the right permits, the building was up to snuff, and then you could then get a permit to rent and pay the county $500. So it was a way for them to generate revenue. So there's definitely a big restriction or contraction in the number of available rentals right now. So my advice to somebody looking to invest, if everything lifts and the vacationers come back, is that investing in a vacation rentable condo that has the proper zoning is a good play, because there's going to be less competition going forward. You can't just rent any old property anymore like you could in the past. And so there's going to be a big reduction in the number of available rentals. So that gets us into the big market dynamic discussion, right? And so I get it. Government response, people complain. Part of it is the owners who were irresponsible and let crazy partiers come in and disrupt neighborhoods, and then neighbors complain to their county council people or their city councilmen, and then now there's a reaction and there's regulation. So the problem with that is clearly, going back to supply and demand, there is more demand for short-term rentals than there is availability of legal short-term rentals, right? Hotels, condos that are properly zoned. We wouldn't have people staying all over the place. These places are full all the time if there was enough legal supply for these units. And so going forward, being a tourist-based economy, I think we're definitely cutting off our nose to spite our face by restricting where you can rent, because what happens when we reduce the number of people that can come and rent, because the hotels are all full and the legal vacation rentals are all full, so they can't go out and stay at a home anymore? Is that going to reduce the number of visitors by 20%, 30%? Those are people who spend money at restaurants, go on tours, go on fishing charters, spend money at local shops. These are people that fuel our economy. But if we restrict their ability to come here, and again, because there's going to be less supply, the cost, the hotels are smiling, right, when they do this, because now the hotels can charge, instead of charging $200 a night, they're charging $300 a night. And at some point, we're going to price people out of the market for their ability to come here. And because of that, they're not going to spend the rest of their money in our local economies that rely on it. So over the long term, definitely a good thing if you're an owner of a legal vacation rental. I think there's going to be more demand as long as people can continue to fly here in the future. But what that larger effect is on our economy, I think is yet to be seen. And that goes back to government. It is almost impossible, in the Big Island anyway, to build a new resort or condominium complex. The regulations now, the environmental impact statements, all of the different things that you got to go through almost makes it impossible from a cost standpoint to build a new resort. We haven't had a new resort built on the Big Island other than the multi-million-dollar ones that Bill Gates can stay at. Normal resort for normal folks hasn't been built in 30 years because it's just so expensive now. And so we're not increasing the supply, but the demand is always going to be there, and demand continues to grow. And we're basically not allowing people to come, or we're going to price them out, and it could have some real big negative effects on the economy.
Scott, you want to add anything onto that?
Yeah, and Dylan hit the nail on the head, and that's why I think it's a really good play now, is because you have the short run disruption. Let's say 2 years, right, of down, tourists coming over here, and so your income stream on that Airbnb is lower. But if you look 5 years, 7 years out, or whatever, because of the restriction in the number of units that you can do in a short-term vacation rental, the long-term play is there. So you buy on the dip, essentially, is what you're looking at, where you've lost the income stream of somebody wanting to sell, and you hold for 5 to 10 years. And the demand will be so much stronger at that point because of these. And just to add, every island's transient accommodation bill is different. So Big Island is different from Oahu. So if you're looking at multiple islands, you need to speak with someone about those specific regulations, because they aren't the same across the state.
And to Dylan's point earlier, it's not only are they different across the state and into various counties, Maui, Kauai, Big Island, et cetera, but also could be different at a condo association, the HOA rules, like you had mentioned as well, Scott. So there's all kinds of dynamics. So what I'm kind of catching out of this is, if there is an existing legal vacation rental, that's probably a solid buy. I would not be risking it though right now, as far as buying something hoping it's going to change, because the laws are kind of all over the place. And as soon as something goes to one of the city councils, God, good luck. God only knows how that sausage making thing is going to turn out, right? So I would not be risking any of that. That's really great advice. I think the one thing, I think what's going to be an interesting conflict, it's fundamentally a conflict, and we see it in Kailua, where there's a huge there's like a sort of a war between the folks that live there. The war is the ones that bought into a quiet neighborhood, they want to keep it into a quiet neighborhood, and those that bought homes with the express purpose of sort of renting them out. And to Dylan's point, renting out to crazy parties going on. And so, there's all kinds of use. There's parking issues, there's sewage issues, there's all kinds of things. And there's a lot of pushback both ways, because there's a lot of money that wants to make this happen. There's billions of dollars at stake, and where there's money, there's influence. And then there's the local residents who kind of, hey, I bought into this quiet neighborhood. I didn't buy into a vacation rental pool system. I didn't buy into a resort community. I bought into a neighborhood community, and I have my children and I have my family here. So that's a conflict that has not been resolved yet. They've nibbled at the edge. But I think there's a conflict. Now, another element to this that to me is really interesting is going to be the whole COVID thing, right? We don't know what's going to happen. Right now, there is no visitor industry here at all. It's essentially all but shut down. And even when it opens up, there's some big question marks of how soon it's going to be before people start flying. It's related. I caught some numbers the other day from some folks I was talking to, and the carriers, the airlines, they're estimating at best they could do 60% of their normal capacity, 60%. So if you think about, full, planes being full just a few months ago, coming over here with something like 30,000 people a day, to now at most 60%, a 40% drop. You're looking at the very, very least, our industry is going to get knocked down 30 to 40% drop, which is going to really change everything. So there's all kinds of dynamics going to be flying around on that one. And God only knows what that's going to do to affect the whole vacation rental market. But I think your guys' advice is good. If you can buy into a legal vacation rental, it's probably a good buy. Okay. We got, let's see, it's 9:46. Let's take a couple of quick questions that have come in. And I think it's a good one. Stephanie Cooney, I'm going to say Cooney. Stephanie, if I didn't pronounce that correctly, please forgive me. She says, I think she's responding to my earlier point when I said the best time to buy is right now. And Stephanie says, well, why? Why would the best time to be right now if you just said prices are up 5%? Dylan, why don't you kind of you lead us on to that one and answer Stephanie's question, and Scott, you jump in when you feel like it.
Well,
Stephanie says, excuse me. Stephanie says CUNY. So thank you, Stephanie. God bless. All right, go for it.
Well, the way to think about it is, if you're in it for the long run, prices next year will probably be up 5% again, and the year after that. So if you were looking to buy in 2018 and prices were up 5% over 2017, but you were going to wait, now prices are up 15% from back then. So, and again, those are round numbers, but the idea is that in Hawaii, there's very limited supply, and over the long run, prices always go up. So if you're going to wait and try and time the market, there's no guarantee that there's going to be a reduction in prices or a drop off. So we may see a little bit of a softening in the market in the next 12 months, but definitely in the next couple of years, you will see appreciation. So, Scott,
how do you take that? How do you address Stephanie's question?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. And first of all is, I always ask people say, hey, I'm waiting for prices to drop. And I say, well, why are you waiting? Well, I'm afraid that, prices may go down. I'm afraid I may pay too much. And to me, that's a fear-based concept. And whenever we come from a fear base, it creates inaction, and we're waiting for the bottom, and we miss it because you never know when the bottom's going to happen. It's on the way up. But also, I think it's short-sighted and looking at the short run if you're in it for the long run. If you're trying to buy something and sell it in a year, okay, yeah, you may want to be a little cautious because we're in a riskier area. But this is the time to reposition yourself for the long run. And like I said earlier, interest rates dropped to historic lows. So it's actually more affordable, and everyone buys on their monthly payment. So it's more affordable by a significant amount to buy now, and going forward. And in doing so, and I always say, buy the right opportunity. You don't try to time the market. You're trying to buy the right opportunity. And I'll give you two examples. I bought my first place in 2001, when I was 23 years old, at the base of Diamond Head for $102,000. My total payment, all in maintenance fees and everything, was $1,000 a month. I locked my biggest monthly expense, which is housing, into 2001's cost of living. And right now, that unit's worth over $600,000. I'd have to buy it with a payment of over $3,000 a month. So I was able to start building equity and pay down that payment. I got out of renting, and then I bought this place that I'm in 2007 at the height of the market for $425. It's worth over $600,000 now, and I built equity on that. This was the play that I wanted to be here. Hey, if I'm waiting to come, if I want to retire in Hawaii or I want a second home here, why are we putting that dream off for what? For a little bit of money? I mean, if I didn't buy that in 2001 at 102,000, I was worried it was going to go down in price a little bit. In the grand scheme of things, what's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grand over this 20-year period? It's nothing. And like I said, the market just gave us a huge discount from a cost standpoint from the interest rate side. And we're not seeing the price drop. We're seeing the tight inventory.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. Thanks, Stephanie. And I want to encourage you all. We got about a few minutes left. I want to encourage you all to kind of throw in your questions over here. I'm going to hold some. I got some cliffhangers for our next show. And thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate that. Yeah, it is great information. So we got. I want to encourage you all. If you're watching this live, throw your question onto the comments on the Facebook, and we'll see if we can get to these in the time that we've got left. Here's actually one that came earlier from Mr. or Mrs. Young. I'm not too sure there, but we'll say Young. And Young says, great info, mahalo nui, guys. Is there a way to know which condo associations are reliable or not as far as handling maintenance fees? So Scott, I think this goes to your one easier. Is there, how do you address that one?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So the good realtors, when they take a listing, will order the condo docs up front prior to going on the market, and then I can ask for it and I can pour through it. Otherwise, you have to get into escrow. I kind of know some telltale signs. If I see maintenance fees in older buildings are 85 cents to $1 a square foot on average. If you got one that's 50 cents a square foot, that's a red flag for me. That's out of the norm. Then I want to look in those condo docs once we get into escrow. But I may have to wait until we're in escrow to be able to get those docs. I know new construction like Kaka'ako is $1 to $1.35 a square foot. So people can run their maintenance fees numbers that way. But boards change every year. They vote people on and people off. You get someone who gets off a board, then the board could go in another direction. You have to be able to look at those docs. And the question is does the listing agent get them up front? I do for all my listings because I want to pour through that. I don't want to see a train wreck coming down the road and a surprise that hits me during the escrow process. Otherwise, we're having to wait till we get into escrow.
So Dylan, what kind of red flags do you look for when you're looking at condo association documents and in that process? What kind of tips do you have for that?
Well, this is maybe a little bit different being in a smaller market than Oahu, but I pretty much am familiar with every single condo there is in my market because there's not that many, right? I mean, there's really 25 or so really big complexes that over time, when you've done multiple transactions in each one, you kind of get familiar with the dynamics of each one, the boards of each one, and the issues of each one. If there are assessment issues or lawsuit issues, some of them have, or foreclosure issues. I mean, there's different things inside of those. You end up getting familiar. So you really just want to work with somebody who knows and are familiar with the condo associations in the market. It might be a little bit harder on Oahu where there's thousands of different associations. But that's a big thing for me. I mean, it's just kind of I know who the problem children are, and I can tell you right off the top.
Yeah, knowing who those problem children are, that'll definitely kind of do the trick there. Hey, so here's an interesting one. So Dylan, a prefab building on the Big Island on the Kona side, is there is anything going on with prefab building?
I guess it depends how what exactly you're talking about. We do have companies like HPM and Hansador who sell packages. So, they basically have 12 different designs of homes and you can buy all the material in a package, and it makes you have limitations on design, but you save some cost on design, and you save some cost because they at scale buy the materials cut to the right specifications. And so there's that's one way to buy, which can reduce the cost. In general, this is the advice I give people who are looking to build whatever you're looking to build, is in the past 8 years or so, the construction industry has been strong and it's been busy. And a lot of the contractors here, even the small contractors, have been busy and then have higher end projects to work on. So it can be expensive. Scott mentioned $200 to $400 a square foot. That's definitely here. I usually tell people plan $200 to $300 a square foot just for a regular house. If you end up doing something kind of extraordinary or use higher end materials, you can definitely exceed $300 a square foot. So it's one thing to save money on the prefab materials. It's another, to find a contractor that can do it and get the permitting done. There's a lot of issues with actually building. It can be a 12 to 18-month process. So most people come from markets that it's not that complicated, and we are a complicated place to build anything. So.
We are a very complicated place to build. Great. Hey, let's move on to another one. Scott, I got one here for you that I've gotten this a bunch of times. Are there tiny homes or communities of cabins with smaller square foot on Oahu, not looking for cheaply built, but well built with strong HOAs? Tiny homes, cabins?
No, I mean, you're going to see that more on the individual doing it, not a full blown development. The big developers, D.R. Horton, Eva by Gentry or Gentry Homes, Haseko, they're doing bigger stuff. Castle and Cook's getting ready to bring up Koa Ridge later this summer. That's going to be a new development project, but they're not going to be tiny homes. It's going to be one-offs. And I'm actually looking at doing that in the ADU capacity, accessory dwelling unit. We're going to be doing some of those, some cool ones. A good buddy of mine actually won an design award for it over in Volcano. He's got a really dynamite one, but that's on the Big Island, and he was doing it for vacation rental. He got the vacation rental permit for it, and things changed.
So Dylan, you had something to say about that.
Yeah, there's two dynamics here. One is people, in my opinion, are not doing it from a community standpoint, because especially on this island, it's pretty much the same on all of them. It's extremely expensive, going back to development, to take a 20-acre piece of land and then split it up into 60 or 70 individual lots. The process to go through that subdivision, the amount of infrastructure you have to put in, water, electric, different things, the cost of the land gets so high that really you got to build a big, expensive house in order to make any profit on the sale end. And so people aren't looking to build a super small, inexpensive home, because it's still going to cost an extraordinary amount to get the land to a place where you can do that. Where people are doing it on the Big Island is we do have very large substandard agricultural subdivisions. We have Hawaiian Ocean View Estates, which is 25,000 acres of 1 acre lots. I think it's been said that it's the biggest private subdivision in America, and you can get an acre of land there for $10,000, $15,000. You don't have municipal water. You need a catchment system. You will have electric, but you can put a tiny home, some type of prefab tiny home on it for a pretty low cost. But you still have other issues like wastewater. You have to build a septic system, so that's going to cost you $20,000 to $30,000 when you got to dig into the hard lava rock in order to put a hole and a leach field. So there's if somebody had cracked a nut how to do this cheaply, somebody would have done it by now, and nobody's figured it out. So
yeah, that's very, very well said, and I think that's about the right time for us to kind of bring this stuff to a close. I do want to give you folks a let's call it a cliffhanger, and I think this is I've got a cliffhanger here, and we got a really, really good one that we're going to cover this at our next show. It was a classic, and this is from Tom from Philadelphia, from Oxford, PA, and he says, I've seen an increasing amount of comments from mainlanders who have been berated by negative, vulgar, and offensive comments from locals, including one couple who's been going to Kauai for 20 years and just bought a condo in Kauai. In February, they and their family were verbally abused and flipped the bird. I realize the pandemic has increased the stress and fear of locals versus tourists, haulis, but is this a bigger problem? If so, why would a mainlander like me buy a property in Hawaii? My wife and I have been going to Kauai for years and plan to retire in Kauai next year, but now I'm not so sure. Mahalo. So that's about as good a cliffhanger as I can possibly give you. We're going to cover that one at our next exciting episode. We're going to be back. We're going to be back here next week, right, guys? Dylan, Scott, we're going to be back here next week. So next week, same time, Yeah, same time, same station, 9 o'clock Hawaii time on the Facebook Live. I want to encourage everybody to be a part of what's going to be going on. The way you need to get connected is you're going to go to livinginhawaii.com, the website. You're going to sign up for that newsletter. That's where we send all the announcements. That's where we have the link to the form where you can ask your questions, folks. It's been totally awesome and totally amazing. We got like 10 seconds, Dylan. Final, anything you want to say? 10-15 seconds max, Dylan.
Well, hey, definitely just reach out to us. If you guys got a question, go to the website, sign up on the form. You can get our contact information from Peter, and it's on most of the places that we post this. So before you start, I just put out a vlog this week, just telling people you're not wasting our time. We work with people all the time who are 6 months, a year out from buying. Don't feel like you're imposing or wasting our time by doing good due diligence and getting informed early. So we're always here for you guys.
We've built a business model to work with you, Scott.
Yeah, I mean,
your mic is muted.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing. You know, I like answering the questions, and the more questions we get, the more I'm able to think about how I can help others as well and share that information with others. So we enjoy it. A side note I would like to say is, for me, Monday is my 21st anniversary of living in Hawaii, of moving over here. I moved here in 1999 with a return trip ticket for 3 months, and I still have that return trip ticket. I never used it. So, you know, that's partly inspiration for anybody that's watching this that's not here, that wants to be here. Hey, I did it. I made it work. My life has been significantly better. I took a right turn and went in a different direction than what I thought my path was going to be. I moved out here and loved it and never left. So Monday, I got a bottle of Spanish cava that I'm going to bust open, which is their version of champagne. And I'm going to go take a little time, watch the sunset, have a little sip on that, and think back about the 21 years that I've been here and how my life has changed.
God bless. That's great. That's what the Living in Hawaii website is all about. Exactly that story. All right, guys. Thanks, folks. I hope you all enjoyed this. Stay tuned next week. Get on the website, get on the newsletter, and we'll see you next week.
Aloha.
Aloha.